I'm 52, and my daughter is 27. She's getting married next month, and up until last Friday, I hadn't heard a single thing about the wedding. No save the date, no invitation, nothing. Everyone else in the family knew about it, cousins, aunts, even my ex-husband's new wife. But not me. I wasn't even an afterthought. I was deliberately kept out of it. That changed when I got a call from my sister in tears, saying she couldn't believe what just happened. I had no clue what she was talking about. Then she sent me a photo. It was a picture from the bridal shower my daughter threw, a big event, pastel-themed, perfectly curated, with all the people I recognized, except me. Right there, at the center of the picture, was my ex-husband, smiling, holding my daughter's hand like she was still 5 and needed help cutting the cake. And that's when I realized I'd truly been erased. Now, I wish I could say this was sudden or unexpected. It wasn't. The truth is, my daughter and I haven't been close in a long time. But it's not because I didn't try. It goes all the way back to when she was 7 and I left her father. I still remember that night, him drunk, screaming, throwing the remote across the room while she sobbed behind the couch. That was the last straw. I packed 2 bags and left with her in the middle of the night. But the courts didn't see it that way. My ex was charming, well-dressed, and very good at playing victim. He swayed the judge, got partial custody, and over the years, poisoned my daughter against me in ways I didn't even see coming until it was too late. I was the overbearing mother, the emotional one, the crazy ex. And he was the fun parent. The one who took her to Disneyland and bought her an iPad at age 9. I couldn't compete with that. Not when I was scraping by working 2 jobs and sleeping on a pull-out couch. By the time she hit high school, I was a stranger. Every time she came to my place, she'd barely speak. She'd just scroll through her phone and ask when her dad was picking her up. I kept thinking it would get better, college would be a reset, adulthood would bring clarity, but it didn't. When she graduated, she invited him to the ceremony and left me off the guest list. And now, nearly a decade later, she's getting married, and I was never supposed to be part of it. Until now. Last Friday, out of nowhere, I got an email from her fiancé. Not from her, from him. He introduced himself politely, said he'd always wanted to meet me, and that my daughter regretted how things were handled. He attached a PDF. It was a formal wedding invitation. My name, printed clearly, no +1. No explanation. No apology. Just that. So now I'm stuck. 20 years of being pushed out of my daughter's life, and suddenly she wants me there. Not even enough to call me herself, she made her fiancé do it. And the worst part? The venue is only 30 minutes from my house. All these people from all over the country are flying in, staying in hotels, and I've been right here the whole time, ignored. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But I do know this, showing up might be the biggest mistake of my life. Or, it might be the one thing that changes everything. I didn't sleep much after that email. The next morning, I opened it again, staring at the PDF like it might say something different. It didn't. Same invitation. Same carefully chosen fonts and floral border. Same glaring absence of a personal message from the one person who should have written it. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank document and started typing, just for myself, I told myself. Just to get the thoughts out. But 1 hour turned into 3. And before I knew it, I'd written something that felt like a letter to her. A letter I swore I'd never write. I told her everything. Everything I'd been too afraid, or too proud, to say over the last 20 years. How it felt when she stopped calling me mom. How I sat through every one of her birthdays with an untouched cake and a phone that never rang. How I used to drive by her school just to get a glimpse of her at dismissal, pretending I was just passing through. I didn't hold back. I didn't soften anything. I didn't expect to send it. I truly didn't. But something in me snapped. I guess after that email, after the bridal shower photo, after being erased so many times, I wanted her to know what it felt like. What it still feels like. So I sent it. No subject line. Just the letter. Straight to her inbox. And then I shut my laptop, took a walk, and tried not to throw up from the guilt and panic building in my chest. I kept thinking maybe it would bounce back, that she wouldn't even see it. But a few hours later, I got a reply. One word, read. No other message. Just that. And for 2 full days after that, nothing. Then, on Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed. I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, and when I played the voicemail, it was her voice. Shaky. Quiet. I could hear cars in the background, like she was walking through a parking lot or pacing on a sidewalk. She said she'd read the letter. She said she cried. Then she said something I never expected to hear. I didn't know it was that bad. That's all she said before hanging up. Now I don't know if I feel worse or better. Because part of me thinks, finally, she sees it. But another part is screaming, why did it take 20 years and a wedding invitation for her to see me as a human being? I still haven't called her back. And the wedding? It's in exactly 12 days. The RSVP deadline passed weeks ago. But somehow, I still have a seat. She hasn't told me if she wants me there or if this is just damage control because her fiancé guilt-tripped her. I don't even know if her father knows she invited me. What I do know is that something is coming. I can feel it. And I don't think this wedding is going to be the fairy tale she thinks it is. I gave in. For days after the voicemail, I called her back. I waited until late evening, when I knew she'd be off work and less likely to pick up out of panic. I don't know what I expected, maybe another one-word response, maybe silence. But she answered. And for the first time in almost 5 years, I heard my daughter's voice directed at me, not through lawyers or distant Facebook comments, but live. Real. She didn't say hi. She said, I don't know where to start. Neither did I. We didn't talk like mother and daughter. We talked like two people walking through the ruins of something they both destroyed in different ways. She admitted she hadn't read most of my messages over the years. She thought it would hurt too much. And then, like a confession she'd been holding in since childhood, she said something that knocked the wind out of me. Dad told me you left because you couldn't handle being a parent. I couldn't even speak at first. She said it like it was fact. Like it was something she carried through every milestone, first dance, first heartbreak, college move-in day. All of it, under the weight of that lie. I had to take a moment. I told her what really happened. Not in angry detail, not to vilify him, just the truth. The broken glass. The shouting. The fear. And how I left because I was her mother. Because I couldn't let her grow up thinking that was love. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I was done, she said she needed time. That she had to process everything. Then she said she was sorry. For the years of silence. For the judgment. For believing the version of me she'd been fed. But here's what stuck with me, she never said she wanted me at the wedding. Not once. She didn't uninvite me, but she didn't ask me to come either. It was like she wanted the apology without the presents. A clean conscience, but not a visible reminder. The next morning, I got a message from her fiancé. He said she'd told him everything, and that he still wanted me there. That he thought it might bring her some peace. But then, 2 hours later, I got a second message, from her father. This one was short, cold, and signed with his full name like we were strangers. If you show up, don't expect to stay. Just like that. No bluff. No dramatics. Just a quiet threat. I haven't replied to either of them. I haven't told anyone in my family yet, not even my sister who keeps texting me asking what I'm going to wear. She assumes everything's fine now. She thinks this is a happy ending in the making. But it's not. Not yet. Because now I'm wondering if this wedding is about to explode. And I might be the spark that lights it up. The invitation said 4 p.m., but I showed up at 3:45, parked down the road, and stayed in my car with the engine off, watching guests trickle into the venue. It was a vineyard outside of town, picturesque, curated, the kind of place you rent when you want every photo to look like it came from a bridal magazine. I still hadn't decided if I was going in. The dress I wore wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't even new. It was the same one I wore to my niece's graduation a year ago, but it still fit, and more importantly, it didn't scream look at me. That's what I wanted, to blend in, not stand out. At exactly 4:12, something changed. 2 security guys came out of the venue and posted up by the gate. They weren't just there for show. They had earpieces, clipboards, and the kind of posture that made it clear they were scanning faces. I knew right then, my ex had followed through on his message. I wasn't just uninvited, I was blacklisted. Still, I waited. Then, at 4:25, my sister walked by. She was dressed in pale pink, her hair curled, clutching a small purse and looking completely oblivious. I rolled down the window and called her name. She turned, saw me, and her face lit up until she walked up to my car and saw my expression. I didn't even need to say anything. I just nodded toward the gate. She went quiet. That's when she told me. Apparently, my ex had spoken to the wedding planner behind my daughter's back, claimed there was family tension and that I might cause a scene. Said it would be better if I just stayed away. My daughter, she said, hadn't been told any of that. She thought I would be sitting in the back, quietly, like we'd agreed. I sat there stunned. He'd done it again. Manipulated everything. Steered the story. Painted himself as the savior and me as the storm. My sister offered to sneak me in through the kitchen entrance. Said she could grab a staff lanyard and walk me right past the guards. I almost said yes, but I couldn't do it. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want my daughter's day turning into a battlefield. I didn't want him to get the satisfaction of seeing me dragged out. I'd lived that humiliation once already. I wouldn't relive it with a wedding band playing in the background. Instead, I made a different choice. I gave my sister something. A card. It wasn't fancy, just a folded piece of paper with one sentence inside. I was here. That's all. No guilt trip. No grand message. Just the truth. I handed it to her, told her to give it to my daughter after the ceremony, and left. But the story doesn't end there. Because 2 hours later, my phone rang again. Not from my daughter. Not from my sister. From someone else. And what they told me. It changed everything. When I saw my phone light up with her name, I had to do a double take. It wasn't my daughter. It was his wife, my ex-husband's second wife. The same woman he married 5 years after our divorce. The same woman who'd never said a word to me outside of stiff courtrooms and family functions where we pretended not to see each other. And yet, there she was. Calling me. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice came through breathless, like she'd just run across the vineyard. She didn't even say hello. Just blurted out, "You need to know something before this goes any further." I didn't speak. I just listened. Apparently, she hadn't been planning to attend the wedding at all. Things between her and my ex had been rocky for years. She said she was tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't, especially after she found out he'd started secretly moving money out of their joint accounts. It gets worse. She told me that 3 days ago, while packing for the wedding, she found a file folder tucked behind a drawer in his office. Inside were emails, printed out, highlighted, between him and the venue, the planner, even the caterer. Every message carefully crafted to paint me as unstable. He'd been planning my exclusion for months, and none of it had come from my daughter. Not one word. My daughter had never said I wasn't invited. Never told them I might cause a problem. In fact, there were several messages from her, asking to make sure I had a seat reserved in the back, away from photographers. She wanted me there. Quietly, respectfully, but there. Her fiancé had fought for me to be there. She had fought for me to be there. And he'd gone behind their backs, told the venue there was a change of plans. Used his money and name to override them. Said the bride was too emotional to deal with it directly. He'd removed me to protect his version of the story. Not for his daughter. For himself. I didn't know what to feel. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak, they all came crashing at once. My hands were shaking. I thanked her. I could hear how much it cost her to tell me, but she said I deserved to know. That this wasn't about her loyalty to him anymore. Then she hung up. I sat there in the dark for a long time, replaying the entire last 20 years. All the moments I thought were my daughter turning away, maybe they weren't. Maybe he had been the wall all along. And right then, my phone lit up again. A new message. From my daughter. No words. Just a picture. It was her, in her wedding dress. Crying. Holding the card I sent. I was here. I don't know what comes next. But I think, for the first time in years, she finally sees me. I didn't expect to hear from her again that night. I figured the photo of her holding my card would be it, a silent bridge, a maybe later. But around 11:30 p.m., just when I was about to turn off the lights, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a picture. It was a full message. A long one. She said she'd found the card tucked under her bouquet. My sister must have slipped it there when no one was looking. She read it right before walking down the aisle, just those 3 words, and broke down crying in front of her bridesmaids. Not because she was sad, but because it meant I hadn't abandoned her. She told me everything. Said she'd been looking for me in the crowd all night. Every time she turned a corner, she hoped I'd be there. She said she knew something was wrong the second she saw the seat in the back was empty, and the planner gave her some weak excuse about a family emergency. Then she asked her fiancé what happened. And he told her the truth. Apparently, he'd found out only that morning that her father had arranged to have me barred from the venue. He confronted him, tried to undo it, but it was already done. The staff had instructions. My name was crossed off the list. I wasn't getting in unless I made a scene. And he didn't want to ruin the day for her. But the irony? The second she found out, she was the one who ruined it. After the reception started, she confronted her father. Right there, on the edge of the dance floor, in full view of the guests. Her veil was off, her makeup was streaked, and she was holding my card in one hand. She told him that he'd finally done what he'd spent 20 years trying to do, make her pick sides. And she picked. She told him to leave. He didn't go quietly. He tried to save face, said he was just protecting her, that I was too emotional, that I would have made a scene. But she didn't back down. Her new husband stood beside her, silent, but firm. And then, her father stormed out. The music never came back on. The guests whispered. Her planner looked like she might faint. But my daughter? She looked relieved. She ended her message with this. You were always there, weren't you? Even when I couldn't see it. I'm so sorry. I hope it's not too late. I sat on the edge of my bed holding the phone, completely still. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't crying. I just felt empty. Like I'd finally run out of pain. There was nothing left to ache. Only quiet. And then I replied. Just 4 words. Tell me when. I'll come. She chose a quiet spot, one of those cafes tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, the kind of place where people bring laptops but don't actually work. I arrived 15 minutes early, sat by the window, and ordered tea I didn't even touch. I kept watching the door. I hadn't seen her in person in nearly 3 years. The last time we were in the same room, it was during a family reunion where she gave me a tight-lipped smile and spent the entire afternoon avoiding eye contact. That day, I went home and cried in the shower like I had something to rinse off. But now, the bell above the door jingled, and there she was. No veil, no makeup, no curated lighting. Just my daughter. She looked tired. Pale. Her hair was pulled back like she'd gotten dressed in a rush. She saw me and paused for a moment like she needed to check if I was real, then came over and sat across from me. Neither of us said anything at first. It wasn't awkward, it was heavy. Like 2 people sitting across from the ghost of everything they never got to say. Then she broke the silence. She told me she couldn't stop replaying that moment at the reception, me not being there, the card, the conversation with her dad, the fact that she let years go by believing I had walked away, when in truth, I'd been pushed out. She said that as a child, she just wanted peace. Her dad made everything so simple. He told her one version of the story and stuck to it. He told her I was unstable, that I left because I couldn't cope with being a mom, that I didn't fight for her because I didn't want her. And she believed him. Because it was easier to believe that than to question everything. I sat there, trying not to let my hands tremble, and told her the truth again. Not angrily. Not with guilt. Just clearly. That I did leave. Because I had to. That I didn't fight the way I should have in court, because I was scared, alone, and had no money. That I failed in some ways. But not in the way he told her. She nodded. Then, she said something that nearly crushed me. I don't remember how you smelled. It hit harder than anything she could have accused me of. That's when I realized, she wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the version of me she never got to know. She said she started putting pieces together a few years ago. That every time she tried to bring me up, her dad would get tense, dismissive. She said her husband, my new son-in-law, was the one who really pushed her to ask questions. Said he saw how much pain there was in our silence. And then she pulled something out of her purse. It was a photo. Me holding her at age 4. We were on a beach, wind blowing our hair, both of us laughing. She said she found it wedged in an old drawer at her dad's house. Torn along the edge. As if someone had tried to forget it existed. She kept it anyway. That moment broke whatever wall had been left between us. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand, and just like that, it felt like I could breathe again. We didn't make promises. We didn't pretend this fixed everything. But when she asked me if I'd come over next weekend, for dinner, no special reason, I said yes. Because this time, I know I'll be allowed through the door. All week, I had been rehearsing how to walk into her house. Should I bring flowers? A dessert? A framed photo from when she was little? I wanted the moment to be warm but not forced, comfortable, not symbolic. In the end, I brought nothing but myself. It felt cleaner that way. Honest. She opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were brighter than they'd been at the cafe. I saw no trace of the bride crying over a bouquet. Just a woman opening her home, for the first time, to her mother. Her husband greeted me with a gentle smile. He didn't say much, just pulled out my chair and offered me wine. He felt like someone who understood how much could break without ever being loud. I liked him immediately. The table was simple, roast chicken, potatoes, a salad she joked was mostly for color. We talked about easy things at first. Music. Movies. The fact that she still can't cook rice without burning the bottom of the pot. I laughed more than I thought I would. But about halfway through dinner, there was a knock at the door. She and her husband exchanged a look. She got up slowly and opened it. And there, standing in the doorway like a shadow that never quite faded, was him. Her father. My ex-husband. He wasn't supposed to be there. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner. His hair had gone gray around the edges, but he still had that same calm, calculated posture. The kind that always made other people think he was reasonable, even when he was twisting reality in front of them. He stepped inside like he owned the room. I didn't move. My daughter didn't introduce him. She didn't even look at him. She just said, flatly, "We're in the middle of dinner." He looked at her. Then at me. Then at the food on the table. And then, for the first time in decades, he spoke directly to me. "I never thought you'd come back." I didn't reply. Because I didn't come back. I was invited. He said he just wanted to talk. That he didn't come to fight. That the wedding shouldn't have gone down the way it did. He looked at his daughter, waiting for her to fill in the silence. She didn't. And then he made a mistake. He said, "You should have just stayed away like always." Like always. My daughter stood up. And what she said next, it changed everything. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just stood there, calm and cold in a way I'd never seen before, not even when she was a teenager trying to ignore me. It was the kind of quiet that makes people lean in, because they know something is about to snap. She looked at her father and said, "You don't get to decide who stays and who leaves anymore." He tried to speak, tried to recover, but she cut him off before he could form a sentence. Not with shouting, not with rage. With facts. She said she'd read all the emails. Every one of them. The printed ones her stepmother found hidden in the office. The instructions to the venue. The email to the planner, claiming I was unwell and known to cause disruptions. The one where he referred to me as a liability. She told him she'd contacted the venue herself. That the manager had confirmed everything. That they'd kept me out based on his orders, not hers. She laid it all out like evidence in a courtroom. No exaggeration. No drama. Just the truth, bare and undeniable. Then she asked him the question that made his face finally change. "Why did you need me to hate her so badly?" He didn't answer. He looked down at the floor like it might help him come up with something, anything. But the silence spoke louder than any excuse ever could. I didn't speak either. I just watched as the version of her father she had believed in for so long crumbled right there in the doorway. Then she said something that I know will echo in his head for years. "I used to think Mom left me. But now I realize, you just made sure I never knew where she went." He tried to defend himself. Said he was only trying to protect her. That I wasn't stable back then. That I wasn't ready for motherhood. Words that used to work. Words that used to stick. But not anymore. She told him that maybe I wasn't perfect. Maybe I made mistakes. But I never stopped trying. And he never gave me a chance to be seen. She told him to leave. He didn't argue. He just nodded, once, and walked out the same way he always did, quietly, like he hadn't just torn through decades of trust. The door closed behind him. Her husband poured us more wine. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the three of us sat in silence. But it wasn't heavy this time. It was clean. It was over. It's been 3 weeks since that dinner. I didn't rush back into her life after that night. I didn't push for daily phone calls or try to make up for years in a few days. I knew better. What we have now, it's fragile. Real, but still growing roots. And sometimes, that's the hardest part, choosing to stay gentle with something you want to hold tightly. Last weekend, she called me. She asked if I wanted to come over again, no big meal this time. Just coffee, maybe a walk, maybe nothing at all. I said yes. When I arrived, the house looked the same, but something small had changed. There was a picture on the hallway shelf near the entryway. A silver frame. At first I walked right past it. Then I stopped, turned back, and really looked. It was the photo she'd brought to the coffee shop weeks earlier. The one of me holding her on the beach, wind in her hair, both of us laughing like the world hadn't touched us yet. It was displayed. Right there. Not in some box or tucked away in a drawer, but out in the open, like it belonged there. Like I belonged there. She saw me looking and smiled. Then said something simple. I found the original. He'd torn it in half, but I kept both pieces. I taped them back together. We didn't talk about him after that. There was nothing left to say. Instead, we talked about her honeymoon plans. She and her husband want to go somewhere quiet. She asked if I'd ever been to Maine, and when I told her yes, she started writing down places I used to visit. She said maybe someday we could go together. Later, as I got ready to leave, she hugged me. It wasn't stiff or obligatory. It was long. It was real. And as she pulled away, she said something I didn't expect, but needed more than anything. You're part of this now. For real. No more in the background. I nodded. I didn't cry until I got in my car. Because for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel like someone's forgotten parent. I felt like a mother again. And maybe that's the thing. You don't always get the time back. You don't undo the lost birthdays, the silence, the absence. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you get the chance to build forward. Not from guilt. Not from grief. Just from love. And this time? I'm not missing a thing.